non-excludable and non-rival. Non-excludable means everybody can use it, you can't keep them off. And non-rival means there's no competition to provide that service. There's only one sidewalk through the public right-of-way that connects to the other sidewalks on its two sides. So sidewalks are a public good. In the city of Atlanta, and while we're here tonight talking about sidewalks, in the 1970s, the city of Atlanta decided that it would not fund the repair and maintenance of sidewalks, even though they're a public good. And the city has that ability, so they stopped funding the sidewalks and determined that sidewalks were the responsibility of the homeowner, even though homeowners are usually responsible financially for private goods and sidewalks are public goods, but city's got the right to decide it's not going to pay for something. So that's been, give or take, 40 years, and some sidewalks have been replaced by homeowners. Periodically, those associations help with funding for sidewalks, and many sidewalks are deteriorated, not just in Virginia-Highland, but throughout the city. I also wanted to sort of head off at the pass. There's some people I've heard that as I ask people about replacing their sidewalks, some people are sort of pinning hopes on the idea that we'll have a transportation referendum, the T-SPLOS, and that funds from the T-SPLOS will somehow be distributed to the neighborhood, and the neighborhood will somehow get to replace its sidewalks. But the size of the sidewalk issue is so large in Atlanta that T-SPLOS funds are not going to solve this problem for Virginia-Highland or for any of its individual homeowners. But the good thing about sidewalks is that actually there's some reason and some habit for people to put money into their own sidewalks, even though they are a public good. And in essence, they have a source of funding that's very distributed across a lot of people, all the people that own property. But that hasn't necessarily prompted people wholesale to replace sidewalks as they wear out. So the Civic Association is concerned about sidewalks, bottom line, because sidewalks are important to the neighborhood. And we set up a series of criteria, figuring that we can't tackle every sidewalk in the neighborhood at one time. We set up a series of criteria, used those criteria to identify what we're calling a bundle of sidewalks being a collection of sidewalks that's close enough together that the city can replace them cost effectively. As the city goes one by one throughout the entire city of Atlanta and replaces sidewalks, first here, then Buckhead, it's about as inefficient as you can get. So we wanted to put together a bundle, and the street that we chose using our criteria for the first section was St. Charles Avenue, and a little bit off the cross streets to St. Charles Avenue, as it's close enough to be the bundle. We identified the sidewalks that are in bad shape in that area, and we set out to talk to all the homeowners or property owners that own those sidewalks. We did pretty well contacting them. There's roughly 50 sections of sidewalks where the property owners are interested in participating in the bundle. Some more interested than others. And my promise to them was that I would come to this board and talk about the Civic Association making a contribution, that I would work with the city so that the city would look at the bundle in its entirety and consider the parts for which it would take responsibility financially, and then come back to the homeowners and ask them for funding to fund their section with potentially a subsidy from the Civic Association, which is what I'm going to ask for tonight, and potentially, where applicable, some subsidy or some funding from the city. So this is the next step in that process. The city's come out and done an estimate for all of these segments. I met with the city on St. Charles today and asked them to go back and revise the estimate in several ways. So we've got a preliminary estimate. We should be having in the next week or so a revised price list, segment by segment. And what I would like to propose today is that the Civic Association offer to make a contribution to those sidewalk replacements that we've identified both as being in need of replacement and basically because it's a public good, and we raise funds to do things that are a public good for the, and distribute funds that are a public good for the neighborhood. So what I would like to be able to offer to people who decide to participate in the bundle is that the VHCA would pay half of the property owner's cost of sidewalk replacement up to the point at which the property owner pays $500 for a segment. A segment is either the front or the side of a property. So a corner property has two segments. Property owner's cost is the total cost of replacing the sidewalk less the piece that the city pays, if the city pays any. The city pays for segments where a tree in the right-of-way has damaged the sidewalk. So on about half of these, the city pays a little bit. And I have to say the city's idea of what is tree damage is a little smaller than my idea of what's tree damage, but we're working on that with the city. Where the property owner's piece for the segment would be higher than $500, the property owner would pay $500 and the VHCA would pay the increment. And we have some.
I don't get that, sorry.
Okay, so say a segment of sidewalk is $1,000. If the property owner has responsibility for all $1,000 and it's split in half, then the property owner pays $500 and the VHCA pays $500. If the cost of the sidewalk is $1,050, the property owner pays $500 and the VHCA pays $550.
So for this one, there's I looked at your list for this commercial apartment complex where the cost is almost $5,000. I'm sorry, I'm not understanding math. They would only pay $500 and you would.
Okay, let me find it. What's the street address?
It's 797 St. Charles. You've got an estimated cost, I think, of $4,722. So how would that work? I'm just not clear on the incremental above the 1,000, that's all.
There must be an error of some sort. I don't see how it could possibly be that high.
173 times 7.
That's got to be a typo or something.
No, it's not. I don't think so. There's others that are.
This is a corner, and so the reason that this is so high is that it's 172 linear feet of sidewalk.
Right.
I'm not thinking that Virginia-Highland is going to kick in $4,200 for this or $3,700 for this.
Okay, so just here's one for 3,908. Just tell me how your proposal would work for a higher number than 1,000. That's what I just want to know. So you assume it costs 3,000.
Okay. And I didn't understand your concern from your email, but I understand it now that you're talking about these particular properties.
Because the way I read it was we would pay anything over and above $1,000, right? And I'm just trying to understand, did I understand that correctly?
Right. Okay, so let's take, for example, 908, which is actually 908 North Highland, which is actually a rental property.
Okay.
And it's
$3,000.
poorly maintained property in a lot of ways. So the $3,000 is that high because there's a short segment in front on North Highland and there's a long segment down the side.
Okay.
So I'm thinking we're not interested in doing the segment down the side. We have an option of.
I'm just asking you for the math. I'm trying to understand your proposal and I'm asking you for the math. So
Right.
I'm asking you to assume that the cost is $3,000 based on your proposal. How much would the VHCA pay? $2,500 of that?
No, because on this one, we would not do all 167 feet. We'd only do 50 feet.
Why don't you just do 50% up to a cap of $1,000 or something, maximum, or something like that? Because particularly, I mean, those larger areas of sidewalk are mostly commercial properties, right?
Yes, I think
So-
that's a good
Half of
idea.
these are
Hopefully they
commercial.
can cover their, infrastructure.
Okay, so we'll pay the balance up to $1,000.
I mean, I just was throwing that out there, I don't,
Yeah.
Well,
Because
whatever
it's
number you want
per
to take.
segment, yeah.
Otherwise, it seemed like open-ended as to how much we were gonna be responsible for.
I think that's a great suggestion, and I'll modify that. Does that help?
I'm not sure.
And just so everybody's certain on this, that would mean the Civic Association might pay as much as $1,500 max for a property.
$1,000.
No, thousand.
Okay,
That's
that's,
Total
property.
okay, I want to make sure because we were talking about incremental, that's why I wanted to bring it up. So the total we would do regardless of the price would be $1,000.
Whatever number you want to pay.
As you've specified it, you're right, the total would be 1,500, because a property could have two segments. It could have a sidewalk segment in front, and it could have a sidewalk segment down the long side. So,
Cap it by the property.
so we can cap it, if you wish, we can cap it by the property. I mean, I'm willing to offer the homeowners or the property owners.
Just by the parcel.
Do you feel like it's worthwhile to consider making a distinction between a commercial property that's a per-profit venture for the person who owns it versus a home occupied residence? I think that there's a distinction between the two properties. I think a homeowner, perhaps we could make an exception for them if they're low income, if they're unable to pay. I think that's a different category than a business owner who owns a commercial property where he makes money off the rentals, and it's to behoove him to improve his own property to attract so tenants to get higher rent. I think there's a difference in the category of pieces of property that you're looking at.
Actually, you would think so, but it goes the other direction. What it turns out is that property owners who actually walk on the sidewalks themselves and they're out there talking to their friends who are pushing strollers and pushing wheelchairs, the people that live in the houses really care about the sidewalks and have a personal stake in improving them. The commercial property owners don't. So what's happened in a lot of cases is that the commercial sidewalks are in worse shape than some of the residential sidewalks, and that if it's a public good to have a sidewalk in good shape, we need a program that would encourage the commercial property owners as well as the residential to ante up. And it's a harder sell. So if you divide it into three, there's the commercial guys that are a hard sell because they don't have a personal stake in it. There's the property owners that have the money and care about it, and if they can, they will participate because it's a good deal. And then there are the property owners who really don't have $500 to spare, and there's a few of them on that street who maybe even at $500 won't be able to ante up, even if it's a good deal.
What I just heard you say was if you've got a commercial property owner who doesn't care about fixing the sidewalk, we're going to say, well, he doesn't care about fixing, so we're going to go do it for him. That's nonsense.
Well, let's think about that. I think for most of the properties along St. Charles, if we make an offer that's a good business proposition, and I think what we're talking about, not the $4,000 one, but I think in most of these instances where it's actually a good value, what we're offering at a reasonable cost to the association and a reasonable cost to the commercial property owner, I think we'll get a decent response because it's a good value for them to improve their property. There are a couple, 908 being the flaming example of a property owner that's a really, really bad citizen in a public sense, with a segment of sidewalk that is smack in the middle of North Highland Avenue that's a safety and aesthetic concern. So then we have a question of, do we want to ante up a little extra and have North Highland look better or not? And that's a little separate question from this question.
It's like, if you don't pay for it, just wait. When we think it's bad enough, we're going to pay.
Okay,
I mean,
I don't
hang
think we'll
on one
get
second.
that.
Lynn's got her hand up.
Yeah. I'm a commercial property owner, and my sidewalks are in good shape. Are you Are you saying that these commercial property owners just say they're not gonna do it?
We have had some yes, yes.
That say they're not gonna do it?
Right.
They-
Sidewalks are in bad shape, it's bad for the neighborhood, this is a great deal we're offering you, and no, they're not going to do it.
And they tell you they're not gonna do it?
Yes.
Is there anything that the association?
This is a particular, I'm sorry, this is a single multifamily building that I'm
Okay.
thinking about.
Since I own multifamily buildings, I'd be willing to make a call on our behalf for that. See if they would talk with me, because I'm on the same level that they are. I own multifamily buildings as well. So that might, there might be a, you know, I don't want to step in where you are, but I would be willing to advocate for that.
I'd
On
love to
behalf
help.
of-
That's a
I'd
great
love to help.
offer.
After the meeting, if you give me your contact
Glad to.
information, that would be
Yeah.
great.
I was just gonna say, is there nothing that we as an association can do to force these people to not have a safety hazard?
The city can, the city has not chosen to do that.
But if they're reported by a citizen and it really is a really bad sidewalk, in years past, the city would go out and cite the person and ask them to repair the sidewalk. Then, if they did not repair it, the city went out and repaired it themselves and billed the property owner. So,
Yes.
have you checked into that?
Yes, the city is extremely reluctant to do that, but under enormous duress, maybe would. So my thought with the sidewalk bundle and where we've taken this so far is that I'd like to see us set up a solid program, make a good offer, make this a good value, and follow it down this path, invite people to participate. And frankly, the response so far has been really positive with a very few exceptions. And then at the end of the process, if it turns out that we have a couple of holdouts that we feel are particularly egregious, we always have the option of going to the city and trying another approach. But so far, actually, on the positive side, it's really been quite good.
There is a business association too. It
Yes.
seems like to me they could become involved in the commercial properties and work with you, trying to convince some millionaire business person that he needs to pay for his own sidewalk without the Civic Association having to pay.
Pam's got her hand up for a while.
Yes.
Well, I know I sent you my concerns earlier, Katie. First of all, I mean, I know you did a lot of legwork, and thank you for doing that. I know nobody disagrees that having good sidewalks is a good thing, and that it's a benefit to everyone, and it's a safety concern if we don't have sidewalks. I guess my concern is really sort of threefold. First of all, I just think that subsidizing should be a last resort as opposed to the first sort of option given to people, because, you know, there really are, and I also fundamentally, unless somebody can't afford it or they're on a fixed income, then I think by all means have a program around that. But fundamentally, I just don't feel we should be spending VHCA funds on something that a homeowner has the duty to pay for themselves. And once you start doing that, then what about all the other people who do the right thing and repair their sidewalks? Then, you know, are we going to incent them to just come to us for money that, you know, at that point we're just throwing it away because they would have paid for it themselves, but for the fact that, you know, we've got this program. I feel like, you know, you don't want to have a stick, you want to have a positive program. From what I understand, one of the biggest hurdles is, you know, just getting somebody out there to do it. And I think your idea of putting together kind of a turnkey program where you get a cluster of sidewalks, you know, you go to these people and you say, here's what the cost would be, you just need to pay, and we'll get the contractor out there, we'll get the city to contribute their portion for the tree damage. You kind of just hand it to them and say, you know, we've done all the legwork, Mr. Homeowner, just pay us, you know, what the cost is. To me, that's the first step, not going to that property owner and saying, hey, I'll give you $500 if you do this, when they may do it on their own, and we don't have to pay them any money. So I think think there's still a positive way to spin it. It's not a stick, it's not peer pressure, it's not publishing names of, oh, you're bad, you didn't fix your sidewalk, but yet a positive way to try to get compliance without having to subsidize, which I just think opens up a whole Pandora's box, can of worms, and I just don't think it's the right thing to do. If somebody needs the money because they're fixed income or low income, great, have a program around it. And I'm particularly annoyed with the idea that, you know, half of these people are commercial owners. On this list that you put together, I looked on Google Earth and I tried my best to identify, but some of these are those old, you know, barrack-style apartment units. A lot of them are commercial buildings. Why in the hell do we give them $500? That's my 2 cents.
Because it's a public good, and if you want a public good, which is a sidewalk, you don't say to some people, this is a public good to you, but not to you because you own a business.
No,
Or this is a public good to you because you don't have a lot of money, but not to you because
you go to everyone and you say, you have a duty to fix your sidewalk, I'll help you get a program in place to do it, make it easy for you, but you need to fix your sidewalk and you need to pay for it.
I think the difference is other similar public goods are supported by tax dollars. I mean, really, it's, I think the fault falls to the city for not maintaining sidewalks as they should out of tax dollars. I mean, you know,
yes,
streets,
this is true.
electrical grid, it's all public good and it's maintained by service fees and tax dollars, and that's the difference here.
So in this case, in the 1970s, the city decided that it was just going to stop funding this public good. City council made a decision, and that was the end of it. It doesn't mean that sidewalks aren't a public good. It just means that that source of public funding became unavailable for sidewalks in the 1970s.
Okay, so the next...
So this in a philosophical sense is, do we want to, does VHCA want to contribute to this public good, which is sidewalks? And if it does,